तत्सवितुर्वरं रूपं ज्योतिः परस्य धीमहि यन्नः सत्येन दीपयेत्। ॐ नमो भगवते श्री अरविन्दाय। ॐ आनन्दमयी चैतन्यमयी सत्यमयी परमे। Welcome everyone to this evening's talk on Karma Yoga. Particularly for people who are in Grihastha Ashrama, who are living in the world, balancing many aspects of life. Karma Yoga becomes almost the most important and pragmatic way of trying to become spiritual. Why? Because just as when we talk about our human experience, 8 hours a day goes into sleep, similarly 8 to 12 hours a day goes into work. So this becomes necessary. If we can use Karma Yoga as a means for spiritual progress, we will be able to use this time for growing inwardly. This is the central secret. Before we delve into the topic itself, very often there is a lot of difficulty in understanding spiritual talks when the clarity of words is not perfect. In other words, we call definition of terms in research and development. First, we all should know, when I say air, what is air? When I say water, what is water? Similarly, in Karma Yoga, karma refers to two different things in spiritual literature. First is action, the work. The other is karma as in karmic. Good karma, bad karma, positive karma, negative karma. So we are not referring to that in today's talk. We are only referring to karma as action. What is the consequence of action? We will see that in a separate subject. So Karma Yoga is the karma in Karma Yoga refers to action. Yoga. Yoga is any effort that brings us closer to God, closer to divine, closer to our own soul. All of these efforts, it can be a very wide definition. So karma becomes the adjective here. So Karma Yoga is how do I become closer to God? Through action. Right? And what is action? That also we have to understand. We take it more or less related to, in a colloquial way here, anything that we do as work, we take it as action. Let us not get into hair-splitting argument on that. So basically this is the lay of the land of the four words: karma, yoga, action, and that karmic part we have left it out. When we look at the traditional way of approaching, human psychology has an interesting way of subconsciously dividing our actions into spiritual actions, devotional actions, spiritual actions versus normal actions, the ones that happen outside. So for example, when I am doing my puja in the morning, that is a devotional action, that is my spiritual action. When I go into the business, I do whatever is necessary in the business to be done, and that is a separate action, that is not to be confused with dharmic action. And that is a traditional dichotomy we see in the society today. Similarly, we also subconsciously categorize actions as great high actions and normal routine actions. So for example, if I introduce somebody to you here today saying that this person is a author, he has written many books on such and such topic, naturally you will say he is a man of accomplishment. Similarly, a CEO, similarly, whatever, anybody who has accomplished something significant, they are, great actions. But when you're talking of somebody who is sweeping the floor, somebody who is doing a driver's work, somebody who is doing menial labor, we consider that to be so-so actions. We don't demean them, but we don't regard them highly. These are all our subconscious classifications. When it comes to realizing the divine through action, all these distinctions are swept away. There is no high action, there is no low action. There is no great action, there is no not so great action. In Karma Yoga point of view, every action or every activity is a means towards divine, is a means towards God. And we have some very shining examples of that. In Bombay, there was a person who used to have a small shop on the side of the road, Baddi Kottu. And he was Swami Nisargadatta Maharaj, one of the greatest Advaitins that India has seen recently. I Am That book is there. You read it, you see it, it's a phenomenal book. He used to speak only in Marathi. His videos are also available in Marathi. And a very ordinary man by our standards. But he was a fully realized saint. Similarly, in Andhra, Telangana region, we have had many Avadhutas. I think near Nellore there used to be Venkaya Avadhuta, Venkaya Swami Avadhuta. Ordinary man doing nothing. Anything he says would come true. He would foresee difficulties for his devotees. He would tell them, don't go today. And his brother, the disciple whom he said, don't go today, his brother insisted we should go today. And this man told here, there will be dead bodies. And it happened there. There was an accident and he could foresee it. So great saints have been quite quote-unquote ordinary in that sense. When we embark on the path of Karma Yoga, the first principle of Karma Yoga that Sri Aurobindo talks about in the small book, The Mother, chapter 5 is, do not regard the position or that particular activity too highly. All activities, all positions are as relevant or as irrelevant when it comes to Karma Yoga. The sense of identity we develop with our profession, with our accomplishments is actually a fallacy. It is a maya. It is an illusion. It holds no water when it comes to the growth of the soul, when it comes to the purpose of our life, when it comes to how do we go closer to God. All of these are not dependent on whether I am carrying a card of a vice president, director, manager, whatever. It doesn't really matter. Unfortunately, many people subconsciously and many consciously also give too much excessive importance to this particular thing. In fact, they thrive, they live in that sense of identity, the power, the projection of the power. In fact, it goes to such a sad degree that I remember a few years ago I saw a video of a banker who was resigning or rather retiring on that particular day, and at the end of his retirement speech, he died. He simply fell down. Because it was killing him, literally, that all this is gone. And this is where we all have to be careful, because all this is nothing. It is meant to go. What is in here is far more precious than what is out there. If we can find this, all the rest is irrelevant. So somewhere along the way we have to figure out that there is no distinction between high works, low works, the entanglement of position, power. In fact, if you look at bureaucracy, all of bureaucracy thrives on power and power projection. I mean, amazing. Even law enforcement, you see some of the law enforcement officials, you try and go meet the senior most people It is as if the British monarch is sitting there and then sir is coming, sir is going, he is not available, he is not that, he is not this, and this man walks in, whether it's a bureaucrat or all of this may serve a certain purpose of oppression, but it's not to say that nobody in that field is spiritual. There are many great people who have been there in the field of spirituality there also and use their power and power projection for the purpose of serving the divine. At the same time, these are more an exception rather than a rule. So these are things we have to keep in mind, that the choice of the work we do, the extent of work we do, the projection of work we do, all of these should not be confused with our accomplishments when it comes to spiritual development. We have to ensure that our psychology is not contaminated by these artificial constructs of power, position, choice of work, nature of prestige. All of these are irrelevant when it comes to spiritual life. This is the first rule of Karma Yoga that we need to understand. In fact, Mother also goes on to say that from the spiritual point of view, the precise place where you are has been designed to provide maximum spiritual development for you. It is custom made. The family circumstances, the career, all of those are custom designed for only one purpose, for your spiritual development. That is what the Mother says. So if we take it like that, whatever job we do is a prasadam. Whatever job is given to us is a prasadam. We have to accept it that way. And to the tune, to the time we are employed, we have to regard that employer also in some way as bestowing upon us some blessing of God. One cannot be blind to the vagaries of these things, but at the same time to imply that yes, I can get away with this, I can get away with that, he doesn't know, I know more than him. These are not constructive attitudes toward fulfilling our employment obligations if we are a spiritual seeker. Others it may serve differently. I had a friend of mine when I lived in the US, he would say, for the number of hours I work, I make more than my CEO. So he figured out the algo. He says, if they're paying me for 40 hours, I work for 4 hours. So it's technically I'm making 10 times more per hour. And he was in California, he used to go surfing and all of these things. Who is to explain? He's a good guy generally. I mean, he's not a bad guy, still, easygoing guy with a lot of values. But still, these are not methods of constructive engagement with employment. That gratitude has to be there, that humility has to be there, all of those things have to be there. So this is one way of looking at action and work when it comes to Karma Yoga. As we come to the second point, let us also look at a cosmic view of things, a universal view of things in time and space. At this point in time, for this world to run, the number of people contributing to it are literally billions and millions and millions. This phone that I hold probably has a few thousand patents in 10 different dimensions. Optics, voice compression, pattern recognition, this, that, you name it. I mean, I don't own even a single patent. So my contribution to humanity is zero in that. It is literally millions of people who are contributing to the world as it runs today. Unless I am maybe a Nobel laureate or a patent holder or a Pulitzer Prize winner, my contribution to the running of this world is practically zero and non-existent. If I disappeared today, nothing will change in this world. It is directly opposite to the standpoint with which we lead our life. I am the most important person in my life. When I say something, it should get done. This person is not listening to me. That person is disagreeing with me. Every decision I make has I at the center. When it comes to the universe, the world, I don't exist and my existence doesn't matter. That is a simple reality. In the cosmic scale, we are like ants, dust. We have to take cognizance of it. Earth has been around for 4.5 billion years. I live for 100 years max. Dinosaurs lived for 165 million years. And humanity has yet to complete 500,000. So just imagine the scale at which we are, and we are a speck. The truth is that the universe has its own play. It has been manifesting. It's been manifesting for millions and billions of years. And it has its own rhythm. It knows what works and what doesn't work. And the way nature works, it can take 1,000,000 years to figure out one small movement. And it can even roll back something that took it 5 million years to develop. Nature is not in a hurry. All of this is what is called Prakriti. Prakriti in the traditional literature. This Prakriti has been around forever. And we are a byproduct of Prakriti. I didn't design my lungs. I didn't design my digestive system. I didn't design my brain. It has all been designed. I just happen to be born, that's all, in this body. My contribution to the functioning of this body is negligible compared to the complexity of its existence and what I can do. In fact, it is truly amazing. The more medicine advances, the more we figure out how many ways the body can go wrong. It's truly amazing. Electricity, chemistry, biology. Why is artificial intelligence struggling so much to figure out solutions to problems that take us a blink of a second? Pattern recognition has taken 2 decades to evolve, whereas ever since I opened my eye, I knew an apple, I knew an orange, and I knew they were different. But it has taken us practically quarter century to design something that can say apple is different from orange in computing. Right? The universe has been at work for a long period, and I happen to be a byproduct, a small, insignificant byproduct in its journey. And all of it that is in me is also Prakriti. That is something I should know. In the traditional path, they have, way of describing it, Prakriti, and there are some 24 ways of looking at it. Panchabhutas, Panchatanmatras, Karmendriyas, Jnanendriyas, those are 20, then Manas, Buddhi, Chitta, Ahankara, all of those 24. These 24 elements are traditional definition of Prakriti. But in Sankhya Yoga, they didn't just say Prakriti, they figured it all out. And they put an X factor outside of all of this. They didn't say man is just these elements. They said no. There is something else that is beyond all of these 24 elements. And that is the Purusha. That is the consciousness that is embodying in all of this machinery. The 24 principles is the machinery. The one X separately is the one who is inside the machinery, who is separate from the machinery, who can see the machinery, who can actually come and go as far as the machinery is concerned. This is Purusha. And what is Purusha in Prakriti in a way, if you try to simplify its understanding, is it is our own consciousness. When we are completely lost in our thoughts, emotions and physicality, we are the Purusha, we are the Prakriti. We are engaged in the Prakriti. We become the Prakriti. The Purusha is absorbed. The consciousness is absorbed into this mechanism. But when I am able to sit in meditation, when I am able to step back from my thoughts, when I am able to say, oh, there are too many thoughts going on, that is not a thought. That is now an awareness beyond thoughts. That stepping back capacity. The capacity to say, I am feeling angry, but I will not react. That is not an emotion. That is an observation of an emotion. This stepping back is Purusha. And the machinery is Prakriti. The machinery can go up and down. It can do whatever it wants. But Purusha is not entangled in it once it becomes conscious. In Sri Aurobindo's famous work, Savitri, he says, the whole wide world is only he and she, the Purusha and Prakriti. The whole wide world is only he and she, This is the knot that ties the stars, that ties together the stars. The two who are one are the secret of all power. The two who are one are the might and right in things. The soul, silent, supports the world and her. See how beautifully he is described. The soul, silent, supports the world and her. So, as long as we remain in ignorance, where there is a domination of the lower nature, kama, krodha, lobha, mada, moha, matsarya, ego, desire, all of these things, then we are living in the lower realm of consciousness. As we evolve, as we work, as we grow, we rise in consciousness, we can become practically divine. At that point, Purusha and Prakriti becomes Ishvara and Shakti. Purusha and Prakriti becomes Ishvara and Shakti. So when you see Ardhanarishvara, it is a representation of the divine form of nature and God manifesting together. So it starts at our level and it culminates at their level. This is the secret of understanding Purusha and Prakriti. The mechanical thoughts that we get, man gets 70,000 thoughts per day, we can't control it. What do I do, sir? Well, there is a way to control thoughts, provided we make efforts. Otherwise, we'll live like a thinking automaton for the rest of our existence in the realm of Prakriti. But spirituality means exceeding Prakriti. Anger is natural. Why should I overcome it? That is not an answer, right? You can't say anger is Prakriti, it is me. No. If you are going to remain angry that way, you are not going to evolve spiritually. Spirituality is about peace, not about anger. Similarly, overcoming our nature and its impulsions in thoughts, in emotions, to transcend all of these is the purpose of spiritual living, where you can remain in perpetual happiness eventually. That is spirituality. To go there, you have to extract your consciousness from all these lower movements and enlighten them with higher movements. So, this is where we come to the second aspect, that while for much of our life we are automated in our existence, automatic thinking, automatic emotions, problems, interacting with everyone based on the lower levels of consciousness, it makes it difficult for us to recognize who we are, who we truly are. If we develop the capacity to detach and observe all of these things, then we evolve in spiritual dimension. And we recognize that this energy flows through us constantly, whether we know it or not. This energy of the world flows through us constantly, whether we know it or not. We take oxygen from outside, we take food from outside. Similarly, we take emotions from outside also. Similarly, we take thoughts from outside also. This machinery is constantly churning in energy. Whatever good or bad I do, it is coming in, it is happening, the energy is at work. When we want to grow in the spiritual dimension, we realize that I am not the doer. This energy is the doer. This energy is the mechanism that is working. Yes, it can work in a good way, it can work in a bad way. This is where our ancient literature talked about gunas. Sattva guna, rajo guna, tamo guna. If somebody is constantly thinking thoughts or living a life which is tormenting others, which is causing grief to others, which is constantly pessimistic, which is constantly critical of others, which is constantly pulling you down, that they said is a tamasic way of living. Tamasic way of living. If somebody is constantly full of gratitude, full of generosity, full of compassion, full of love, full of wanting to help others, remaining silent, speaking softly, gently, turned inward a little bit, such temperament, they call it sattvic temperament. Sattva guna sampanna, Sri Ramudu gurinchi cheptam manamu. So their natural tendency is towards compassion, towards life, towards harmony, not fighting too much, not arguing too much. If there is too much going on, they'll just recede. They won't impose themselves. This is sattvic temperament. Then there are people who are full of abundant of energy. When they speak, they attract 20 people around them. Wherever they are, their presence is very strongly visible. They are able to work a lot. They can put in 18 hours of work every day. A lot of strength, these are rajoguna. So one has to understand, okay, there is missionary, there is the witness consciousness, but how is the missionary working? We have to analyze and understand. In fact, recently we did a retreat, a 3-4 day retreat in Himalayas, and we actually created a worksheet on the gunas to understand ourselves. How are your thoughts? Are your thoughts sattvic, rajasic or tamasic? How are your emotions? Are your emotions sattvic, rajasic and tamasic? How is your body? Is your body rajasic, sattvic or tamasic? It is important, if we want to grow spiritually, to understand what is my equation here. Where do I fit in? And for spiritual purposes, our effort would be initially to move from tamasic and rajasic towards sattva, towards light, towards knowledge, towards refinement, towards beauty. Eventually move from sattva to beyond sattva, but that's an advanced topic, Trigunatita. So, Prakriti is embedded with gunas, and if we want to practice Karma Yoga, we have to understand what is my natural temperament. What is my natural temperament? Natural temperament of the mind, natural temperament of my emotions, natural temperament of my body. It takes time, but it is doable. There is one story that I have narrated here earlier also about Tapovan Maharaj from Himalayas. He was the guru of Swami Chinmayananda. He used to live in a cave in Himalayas near a river every day morning. He would go take his bath, come back, do his austerities, and he was a very recluse. He did not want an ashram, he did not want disciples. Nanavaru, don't come to me. That was his approach. One day when he was returning to the cave, a thief had gone into the cave and stolen a blanket and he was running away. So Tapovan Maharaj ran into the cave and he took out another blanket and started running behind the thief, saying that the blanket you have taken is an old blanket, it has holes, this is a new blanket, you take this. That is what Sattva Guna teaches us. That is compassion. If it were me, I would take a stick and run behind the thief. Give me back my blanket. That's what we all do. That is mine. That is how we view it. That is Rajoguna. The spontaneous temperament, and the spontaneous word is important, is something that gives us a clue to our own nature. The way to work towards Sattva Guna, moving from Rajoguna and Tamoguna, is give time to ourselves every day and create activities that move us towards Sattva Guna. What are those activities? We can do meditation, we can do Swadhyaya, read something spiritually uplifting every day for half an hour in the morning. Do half an hour of meditation in the morning if possible, evening if possible. Japa can help in refining our nature. Japato nasti patakam antar. All the karmic dirt that is accumulated with a lot of japa, it is gradually removed from our inner nature. Some of these things are they're stored in our body and mind. They have to be cleansed. So we have to uplift ourselves. And for example, if we identify that I am more prone to anger, then cultivate the opposite of anger, which is peace, and create opportunities. If I am somebody who is restless, spend more time in nature. Sit near a waterfall, somewhere quiet, in an open sky, on the terrace. Everybody has terrace, access to terrace. Look at the sky. Just empty yourself. Just be there, quiet, still, so that restlessness gradually comes. And it doesn't happen in a day, but in 2 years it happens. After 2 years, when you sit next to a restless person, you perceive those vibrations of restlessness. You say, no, I don't want such vibrations of restlessness. It takes time. It is not difficult. But awareness of it is important. The culturing of it is important. The effort towards it, the regularity, the discipline. This is what we call sadhana. We have to develop that capacity to keep working towards sattva guna over a period of time. Right? And as we do that, the Purusha is the silent witness. I'll read out a small couple of paragraphs from Sri Aurobindo. It is precisely this universal will and intelligence which thus acts through the calm, indifferent and inwardly silent yogi who offers no obstacle of limited and ignorant personal will and intelligence to its operation. What he's saying here is, when the universal will is carrying us, then when there is no ego and desire, we don't distort the flow of that higher energy. We observe it, we cooperate with it from a point of view of calm, silent and indifferent. Let things happen. This is a very important approach of Karma Yoga. Recognize that 90% of the world runs by the machinery and I don't have to put my finger into every moving part. I recognize when I work on Karma Yoga that the universe is an ocean that is flowing and I am just a speck of dirt or speck of dust or a leaf and I let it go. Yes, maybe a little bit nudge here, a little bit. I will not fight with all my might at every single point where there is a disagreement. Yes, you may choose to fight at some points where you are meant to fight based on dharma. But you also don't struggle at every second saying that this is how I want it to be, this is what I told you to do, so this is how it should happen. If you keep emphasizing that, then you are no longer going with the flow. This is what we talked about, going with the flow, opening to the universal energy. This is how we become an instrument. I am not the doer. The universe is the doer. I am going with the flow. And as we do this, it is not that we can't act. He says the status of an inner passivity and outer action, independent of each other, is a state of entire spiritual freedom. I do my entire work and I am going to let things happen and unfold as they do. And this is where Gita says, inaction in action and action in inaction. I am still while the tamasha is going on around me. Swami Vivekananda also says in one of his powerful quotations, I have to tell you from memory, that a spiritually advanced person is still in the middle of a storm. You don't get upset, you don't get carried away. One sadhak wrote to Sri Aurobindo, yesterday I worked with great vigor, and after I saw the mother in the evening, I felt there was no physical tiredness at all and I could work for 12 hours or more. Sri Aurobindo writes, it is the mother's energy that comes down into the vital and physical for those who are open. When we open to the universal force carries us towards extraordinary heights, extraordinary lengths. And this is an experience of many who have done service and work for Mother and Sri Aurobindo. Even when I was a young teenager and I would participate in youth camps, many times, many of us would notice that we were working harder and for longer hours yet feeling no tiredness at all. And more recently, last year in December, we had our annual conference. Many of our active volunteers said the same thing, that we really are pulling on long hours, but there is no fatigue. Because at that time, we were constantly invoking the Mother in our consciousness, individually and collectively, and we were just working. And the sleep was inadequate. Because the body was so much into action, it was difficult to fall asleep. And yet, with 3 hours, 4 hours of sleep, we were able to run through the entire program. No fatigue, no energy loss, nothing. The divine energy was just carrying us. It is you can talk to some of our other volunteers. Fantastic experience for many. They shared later also. So, what I'm reading here, the reason I'm giving you these examples is, sometimes when we read these fantastic passages, we say, oh, it was possible when they were there, or oh, it was possible in the ashram. No. The spirituality we speak of is something that you and I have to be able to implement and live in this Hyderabad city as we do whatever we do. Otherwise, then we are not doing justice to it. Further, Sri Aurobindo says elsewhere, if there is the full surrender in the work, and you feel it is the mother's, and that the mother's force is working in you, then fatigue does not come. Elsewhere he writes, if there is fatigue, that means the surrender is imperfect. He says the other way around also. You must be able to find the mother in work and action, as well as in concentration and silence. It is in fact when all within is silent, free from desire and no restless movement, that the mother's force can act best and do things in the right way. You should aspire to the mother for the right force to act and do work and find her in work and action. So, we spoke of the flow of energy in 2 different ways. Of course, the first step is recognizing that we are a small speck and there is this whole universal energy that is going on. Second, recognizing that this universal energy can be in multiple modes. Ignorant mode, where sattvic, where tamasic and rajasic movements are there inside of us, and a higher mode, which is the mother's force, what he's talking about, which moves us towards enlightenment. As we are able to take a witness consciousness, we recognize that we are not the doer of the works. The works get done, the actions get done, things happen, and we are a conscious participant. This is the second principle of Karma Yoga. Okay? So, now we are moving into the third principle. First we talked about, what was the first principle? When we came to second principle, we forgot the first. What was the first principle of Karma Yoga? No attachment to the position, no attachment to the work itself, no high work, no low work. That is the first principle. Second principle, we are not the doer of the work. The energy is coming down, it is carrying us through, it is moving on. If we are able to remain calm, detached and surrendered to Krishna, surrendered to Mother, then automatically we know that it is their force that is carrying us. And we are only a witness. So I am not the doer of the works. The works happen through me. This is the second principle of Karma Yoga. Then, okay. Further, I'll read a couple of sentences which go with the discussions we've had. Sri Aurobindo says, if you want to be a true doer of divine works, your first aim must be to be totally free from all desire and self-regarding ego. This is a statement that is worth memorizing for any person who wishes to be a Karma Yogi. If you want to be a true doer of divine works, what is the first aim? Be free from 2 things. What are those 2 things? Desire and ego. Desire and ego. This is a very difficult injunction. I'll ask you a simple question. Why would I work hard on my job to get my promotion? If I don't want to be attached to promotion, why should I work hard? Simple question. I am aspiring for something and I am working towards that goal. How can you say don't work towards a goal? Don't have a desire for goal? Is it practical? This is where we have to understand it a little more carefully. While the practicalities of living make us work towards a goal, the attachment to the goal is what is prohibited. You are allowed to set a target. You are allowed to work towards a target as long as possible, as hard as possible. But what is being said also is that do not make that a prison. Do not create a situation where you are so attached to that result that not getting the desired result causes other issues. Depression, dejection, anger, disgruntlement, all of that. You are permitted to have a goal to the extent that the goal does not defile or lower your own nature, your own spiritual aspiration. In fact, this desire and ego is something that you see Sri Aurobindo referring to many times. Synthesis of Yoga, Life Divine, wherever you go. Careful with your desire, careful with your ego. He says desire was a help, desire is the bar. Ego was a help, ego is the bar. All of these are helpful at one stage in our evolution. But they also have to be let go when you are moving towards spiritual life. In this chapter 5 of the book The Mother, he says, there must be no demand for fruit, no seeking for reward. This is a very subtle principle of understanding Karma Yoga where many people either struggle or fail. It's straight out of Bhagavad Gita, right? Karmanyevadhikarasya. Anybody who talked about Bhagavad Gita, this is one shloka they know. Karmanyevadhikarasya ma phaleshu kadachana. But understanding the subtlety of what it says is not that easy. And to put it in practice is that much more difficult. One has to use all the logic we use for business, all the logic we use for programming, all the logic we use for our job. We have to use it here now. What does he mean when he says don't be attached to the fruit but yet keep doing the work? You will come up with your own insights into it. That is one of the very significant points of spiritual literature. What I am explaining to you is what I have understood and what I have received. What you will understand 5 years from now, if you keep on churning this shloka inside of you, is something very unique to you. And that insight will change your life. Each of us, I know this senior sadhak who translated Savitri, he would say, when I was translating, sometimes those lines would be so difficult, I would write those 2 lines, put it in my pocket. And every day I would keep reading it 2-3 times, put it back into the pocket. And gradually those lines would go into my system and then they would unflower. Slowly they would blossom. And that is how spiritual life is. You are hearing the principles of Karma Yoga. Don't be attached to the position. Understand that you are not the doer. Don't be attached to the fruit. But if you go out and don't work on this, then Karma Yoga is not happening. What does this line mean to me? That there should be no demand for fruit, no seeking for reward. Can I work without seeking reward? Can I work without demanding a fruit? How does one work? Obviously, if something has been said for thousands of years, it must be true. If I am not able to resonate in logic, what am I missing? The idea when we understand the fruit, the result of our action coming to us and not coming to us, there are many ways of understanding it. The outcome of a particular pursuit is not defined only by the effort into that pursuit. You may be having a most noble aim, but there is a bigger universe at work and it will permit that fruit to manifest only if the time is right for that fruit to manifest. If it is not the right time, it will not let it manifest. Even if it's the most noble action. It takes time. The stars have to be aligned. All of this has to be understood with a sense of philosophical resignation. If it comes, well and good. If it doesn't, well and good. There are many stories, but again, we have to understand our own perspective is very, very limited. The story of a farmer and a horse. He had a good horse. His son decided that he will take that horse on a ride. That fellow goes, rides a little bit, falls down, breaks his leg and comes back. Oh man, my misery, my son has broken his leg. The whole village comes, expresses sympathy and goes back. Within a week there is a war on the kingdom. So the soldiers come saying all able-bodied men should go to war. All the boys are picked up. This fellow is not picked up because his leg is broken. Oh God, thank you for saving my son. He could have been killed in the war. What we see as a result is a very myopic perspective of happenings around us. There is our karma, there is our family karma, there is our national karma. All of these have to align for the result to come. No single determinant. So we have to work remembering that there is a lot at work that goes on. When we start practically implementing these approaches of Karma Yoga, the three principles of Karma Yoga that we discuss, there is more literature. In fact, we can dwell on the topic of Karma Yoga for days, and it is possible that maybe one of these days we will try to build a workshop around it, because it is not that trivial a topic, and in its relevance, it is probably one of the most profound topics for grihasthas like us. If we crack it, we are done. Self-realization in this life. But it takes time. But what is the result? Okay, let us say I am going to not be too attached to the job I have, too attached to the position. I recognize that at least once in a while I try to remember, no, there is something, there is a divine force I remember and offer. I say, you are working, I am not working, you are the actual person doing all of it. All that is fine. Then I come to the point where I am slightly detached more and more. I recognize that the divine is working. I recognize the divine will give the fruit. He is the dispenser of the fruit. What will happen? So Sri Aurobindo writes some beautiful passages on this. Afterwards, you will realize that the divine Shakti not only inspires and guides, she initiates and carries out your works. All your movements are originated by her. All your powers are hers. Mind, life and body are conscious and joyful instruments of her action, means for her play, molds for her manifestation in the physical universe. This is where we move towards self-realization through Karma Yoga. When we recognize that energy that I thought was not me, it is God. When I recognize that I didn't achieve this position or this place in life, good or bad, up or down, it is God who has placed me here. My job is to keep doing my work with absolute sincerity, doing dharmic things. Gradually we let go of the desire for fruits. We are surrendering more and more and more. We are then able to open inwardly to the divine, and gradually all your movements are originated by her, the Shakti we talked about. All your powers are hers, the Shaktis. Mind, life and body are conscious and joyful instruments of her action, that Shakti. Means for her molds, means for her play, molds for her manifestation of this universe. The last stage of this perfection will come when you are completely identified with the Divine Mother. You feel yourself to be no longer another and separate being, instrument, servant or worker, but truly a child and eternal portion of her consciousness and force. So all of it gradually leads to the identification with the divine. You are a portion of her consciousness and force. This is the highest state for a spiritual seeker, where the identity of ego is dissolved. The movements of desire are dissolved. The only thing that exists is this shell through which the divine is doing their work. I don't exist anymore. It is she who exists. And this is the state of avadhutas. And I explained to you examples of avadhuta. This is who they are. There is no independent will. There is only the divine will. The mother breaks this down. She says, first, become an individual who is conscious. Again, a few tips for sadhana. How do I get there? Become an individual who is conscious. You are not mixed with the negative movements of Prakriti. Second is surrender entirely, consecrate to the divine. And third, the divine takes possession of the individual and changes him in his own image. The divine changes him in his own image. Sarupya mukti. In Vaishnavite terms. You become like that. And there are examples of disciples in Sri Aurobindo ashram where their gaze started looking like the mother's gaze. You could sense it, you could see it. Those who saw the mother, when they saw these people towards the end of their life, their limpid eyes and that compassionate gaze, the consciousness had merged into the mother's consciousness. There are times when one grows in Guru's consciousness. The Guru's force works through the disciple. Things happen, healing happens, circumstances rearrange to what is needed for the work. The person working knows that it is not his personal capacity that is making all this happen. There was a time when one of the sadhaks in the ashram was speaking and another sadhak was watching him. He could suddenly see mother in that person's place. That much was the identification with the mother's consciousness. There were two sadhaks, Kapali Shastriyar and MP Panditji. Kapali Shastriyar was the senior and MP Panditji came and stayed with Kapali Shastriyarji in his house as a younger disciple. Both were in Sri Aurobindo ashram. Later on, once when MP Panditji was speaking, somebody saw him and they saw Kapali Shastriyar instead of MP Panditji. Because that consciousness was so embodied, there's no I left. That era is gone. Complete identification with the divine. So, I think that more or less brings us to the main themes of what it is to practice Karma Yoga. Let us all concentrate for a few moments. Pray to the Mother to open us to her consciousness. Help her, ask her for her force and help to walk through these 3 steps. 1, recognize that whatever position, power, all these are incidentally placed and I am there accidentally for whatever reasons. 2, my capacities, my intellect, my knowledge, my articulation, all of those are powers that belong to the divine. My thinking capacity, all of that. Everything that is important in this being is a force of the divine. I am only the witness. And ask Mother to dissolve our ego and desire and help us outgrow the attachment to the fruits of our actions. Let us all together chant Om. Take 3 times we will chant together. You can first do a little bit of deep breathing. Between the Oms also observe the silence, become aware of the silence inside of you, become aware of the silence outside of you. Take a few more deep breaths.